Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Jessica Flynn and I am the owner and maker of Flynn Sisters Boutique. And today I'm going to show you guys how to put wrapping paper on your tumblers. It's so much easier than putting cardstock on your tumblers. I did a tutorial on that back in December, I believe, and I thought how fun would it be to try it with wrapping paper, because a lot of you guys had asked me if wrapping paper would work also. So I had some super cute leopard print wrapping paper left over from Christmas, and it was absolutely perfect for this project. I also used Alumilite's new sealer and adhesive product, and it worked perfectly for this. I'm going to have that linked and listed down below, along with a discount code for you guys as well. So that's enough chit chat from me. Let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to start out like we usually do by properly prepping and sanding our cup. I'm using a 60 grit sanding block and lightly going over all the surfaces of my cup. And then I will spray it down with some rubbing alcohol and dry it off with some paper towels. Alternatively, you could use a sanding compound at your sink to scuff up and clean off your cup. I've done that in a few other videos. I just want to show you guys an alternative to prepping your cups. Once we're done with that, we're ready to get started. I have this small bit of wrapping paper left over from Christmas. This is literally all I have left. I think this is maybe like a 14 by 7 inch section of wrapping paper. And I'm just going to cut a straight edge along one side of it. I just want a really nice straight shape for my wrapping paper before I put it on the cup. And I'm going to do a kind of a trial run to see if there's anything I need to trim off. I want to have about a 1 inch overlap when it goes around the cup. All right, so on one of the edges, I want to have a 1 inch overlap. If you were doing a full wrap, you would want a 1 inch overlap around the side and the top and bottom. I'm using the new sealer and adhesive from Alumilite. I'm going to have a link down below. I just put mine into like a little squeeze bottle thing, and I am applying it on the cup with a brush. You want to have a pretty conservative layer of this stuff on your cup. You don't want it to be too thick, or it'll take forever to dry, but you also don't want it to be too thin to where it dries too quickly before you're able to, maneuver your wrapping paper around your cup and all that. All right. And if you have any like chunks or like giblets that get into it, you just want to kind of take those out. All right, so once I've got the whole cup covered with the adhesive, I'm going to take one edge of my wrapping paper and try and line it up as straight as possible down one side of my cup. All right, this is why it's helpful to have about a 1 inch overhang, because if you don't get it completely straight, it's okay. We can trim stuff up later. All right, so once we have that edge anchored down nicely, we're just going to move along the side of the cup and smooth it out with our hands, like firmly pressing down. You can also use the felt edge of one of your vinyl scrapers. That'll help kind of push out any of the bubbles. You're going to find that wrapping paper is a lot easier to work with than cardstock. When you're choosing your wrapping paper, you want to pick something that's not textured. Preferably, you want something that's like a little bit glossy and like a higher end wrapping paper. When you get to this end where it overlaps, we're just going to put another strip of the adhesive down underneath the overlap, and then we'll press down the overlap with our brush. Got that seam laid down nicely. We're going to go over the whole thing with a nice coat of the adhesive. While we're brushing the adhesive on, we're going to work out any kind of additional wrinkles or bubbles that we might find. It's pretty easy to work out the wrinkles on this wrapping paper. Like I said, it's a lot easier to work with than cardstock because it's not like porous. It's not absorbing the adhesive, so that's nice. Once we've got this all covered, I'm going to set this aside to dry in a safe place, and mine only took about an hour to dry. Once that layer is completely dry, we're going to go back over it again with a second generous coat of the adhesive, and we're going to apply it in the same way that we did the last one. This coat, again, I'm going to set this in a safe place to dry for at least 1 hour. And then now that everything is dry, we're ready to move on to the glitter part of our design. I wanted to do a green glitter bottom section on this cup, so I'm just using a stack of tape to set a pencil on to draw a straight line all the way around my cup. I am using a straight skinny cup, so there is no taper to this cup, which makes wrapping it so much easier and doing these kind of sectioned off designs like this. I'm using some painter's tape and I'm going to run it along my table or my clothes to take off some of the stickiness to it. You don't want that tape to be too sticky. And we're going to use this piece of tape to mask off that bottom section. We're just going to use some saran wrap to mask off the remaining section of our cup there at the top. I'm going to spray paint that bottom section with spring green spray paint from Rustoleum. Once that's dry, it only took about 10-15 minutes to dry, I'm going to spread a little bit of Alumilite's Quick Coat. This is their amazing Quick Coat fast drying epoxy. We're going to use this to adhere our glitter. So I'm going to apply a very, very thin coat. I just mixed 5 milliliters of it, and I'm going to use less than 1 milliliter to apply the glitter. Okay, we want a very, very small amount of epoxy here to use as the adhesive for our glitter. Once we've got all that epoxy spread on there nicely, I am going to use Fitz from Peachy Olive Glitters. This is a beautiful, extra fine green glitter. I absolutely love this color. I think it contrasts so beautifully with this white and black print. And once we've got great coverage with our glitter, I'm going to remove that saran wrap and our masking tape. You want to make sure that you are removing that tape very, very carefully so you don't accidentally lift any of that adhesive off of your wrapping paper or damage it. Done with that, I'm going to set it to the side to dry upside down for about an hour and a half. Remember, we are using fast setting epoxy, so it won't take as long as usual. If you're using regular epoxy, it'll take you about 2 to 3 hours. I'm going to go ahead and put this on my turner now that my glitter is completely dry. And I am going to tape off this top section with a piece of painter's tape that I've ran against my clothes to remove most of the stickiness from it. Again, we do not want to put super sticky tape over our Mod Podged wrapping paper. Okay, so once we've got that top section masked off again, I am going to use Quick Coat from Counterculture. Quick Coat is a water-based urethane sealer, not to be confused with amazing Quick Coat epoxy. Okay, they're two totally different things. Alternatively, you could use polyacrylic for this step. I just like using Counterculture's Quick Coat because I get fantastic results with it every time. So this is it. This is the water-based urethane sealer. We're going to pour a little bit of it into a medicine cup, and I'm going to use a silicone brush to spread it onto my cup, and I'm going to let it turn to dry. This should only take about 30 minutes or so for it to dry, 45 minutes at the max, depending on the temperature of your workspace. And I'm using a liquid sealer instead of a spray sealer for this is because I really, really do not want any kind of movement from that glitter. And this particular sealer will ensure that it does not move. So once that's been applied, I will remove the tape very, very carefully. You do not want to let this dry with the tape on it. Okay, so very carefully remove that tape, and then we're going to let it continue to dry for that full 30-minute period. Once it's dry, I'm going to brush the top with a quick coat just to make sure that that top is fully coated and sealed before we move into epoxy. The top will also take about a half hour to dry. Once all that sealer's dry, we're going to put our first coat of epoxy on. This first coat was about 30 milliliters of epoxy, and I don't even think I used it all. and everything's sealed up nicely. So we can just go over everything like we normally would with any other coat of epoxy. And I'm gonna let this coat dry for 4 to 6 hours, and then I went directly into a second coat. Second coat dry for 8 to 12 hours, and then we were ready to move on to sanding and our decals. All right, so here we go. Our cup has been drying for at least 12 hours, and it's got the 2 coats of epoxy on it. And we're going to sand down the top rim of our cup. The reason why we need to sand down the top rim is to expose a fine line of stainless steel up around the top, which is where our final coats of epoxy will establish a seal for the cup. That way we're establishing the seal on the outer rim rather than the upper rim up at the very top, where it's more vulnerable to chipping and things like that. The rim all sanded down. I did any kind of necessary sanding around the sides to knock down any kind of sharp bits that might have been poking up. We want to make sure that everything is completely smooth before we apply our decals. I've got this all sanded up. I'm going to take it inside to rinse it off with some dish soap and water, and I'm going to dry it off with some coffee filters. When I was rinsing off my cup, I noticed that that top rim was looking a little bit rough. So I ended up trimming off the top with my edge trimmer from the wickedshimmersupply.com. I'll have a link for them down below, as well as a discount code. And this just really kind of cleaned it up for me to make everything look nice and crisp. Definitely don't need to do this, but I like the way it turned out better after doing this. Definitely can do this after your Mod Podge and stuff dries before epoxy, which is what I should have done. I just didn't think about it at the time. And really quick, I'm going to show you guys how I did the decal for this. The file for this design comes exactly like this. The problem is that top lucky word, it's just set up as like a cutout. Like there's no like extra cut instructions for that particular part of the design, so we're going to do that ourselves. So I just ungrouped everything and duplicated that one layer, and after I duplicated it, I contoured it so that all of the center parts of it were filled in. So it basically is just a blank offset of that lucky word. Okay. And then I'm going to take the other duplicate that we made, and I'm going to remove what is like the offset portion. So it's like a standalone, just the words. So we have an offset layer, and then we have a separate layer for just the word lucky, if that makes sense. So that's how I messed around with that file to create the decal that I am going to put on this design. After I got all that taken care of, I made it all the same color, obviously, so I can cut everything on the same mat, just using 3 different colors of vinyl. And you're gonna see what I mean by all this when you see me build the actual decal itself. So here we have all of our pieces cut. I pretty much just used 3 different shades of green, just like they did in the file. And we're gonna weed this like we normally would, and then I'll show you how I layered it. All right, and so I'm just going to use my transfer tape and pick up the bottom piece, then move on to the second middle piece there. You don't want these pieces to overlap. You just want to set them up side by side. So we get a layered look without all the bulk. It's just set up one by one next to each other. That makes sense. I'm going to transfer that full green piece to my cup first, and then I'll transfer the final white wording at the top afterwards. All right, and once I'm done with my decal, I'm going to apply a thin vinyl silver line starting at the same seam as my wrapping paper, just so it's not so noticeable. This is just a silver mirror chrome adhesive vinyl that I've cut into 11.5 inch by 0.20 inch strips. And using the natural line of our design, I'm just going to hand place this line and trim it in the back using my craft knife. After this, I did seal my vinyl with some more of that water-based urethane sealer, just because we had a lot of goings on with this decal work and I don't want any kind of lifting under epoxy when I go to put my final coats on. I let this sealer dry for at least 30 minutes. It has to be completely dry, and I applied my final coat of epoxy. This final coat was just 20 milliliters of epoxy, and that was it. We were done. So that's it for this tutorial. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you loved it, please be sure to give us a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel. We do upload new videos every Wednesday and Saturday. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again soon. If you love this video, you could check out our last video here. Also be sure to find us on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, and of course subscribe for all our new videos that come out every Wednesday and Saturday. Thanks so much for watching. See you soon.